There's certain names that I will share with you that are really, really important that you've probably never heard before. And that's why I think it's important to record it, or at least to write things down. And then you can YouTube these names or look them up. And the first one that I'll share with you is a gentleman by the name of Ignacio Piñero. I-G-N-A-C-I-O. Piñero is P-I-N-E-I-R-O. Ignacio Piñero. Ignacio is known as the father of the son. Now, what is son? Son came from danzón. And what is danzón? Danzón, for those of us that don't speak Spanish, or you that don't speak Spanish, danzón is the waltz. Okay? So the Spaniards brought to Cuba the waltz when they came in 1493 or whatever it was that they showed up. But in 1913, 4 people got together and they called themselves the Grupo Oriental. And they called themselves Grupo Oriental because the eastern part of Cuba towards the south is called Oriente. And you hear in Celia Cruz some of her songs that she talks about Oriente. Also, La Lupe came from the Oriente. Los Papines, Los Muñequitos de Matanza. Many of those famous artists from Cuba came from that area because that's the area where the slaves lived. Okay, so anyone of color, if you go to Puerto Rico, you'll see that in San Juan there's a lot of light-complected people. But it just 20 minutes in a car, there's a little town called Loíza Aldea. And Loíza Aldea is about as black can be, because that's where they pushed all the slaves. So anything to do with Santeria or the Yoruba religion is out of Loíza Aldea in Puerto Rico. If you say you went to Loíza, people go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Any chickens? You know, because chickens don't survive there very long. Because that's part of the Yoruba rituals that they use. In Cuba, it's more Oriente. And the Oriente part is Santiago de Cuba, which you'll hear that name. But in Havana was where most of the Spaniards stayed. And anyone that went to bed with a Spaniard considered themselves like part of that blood, like that they were better than the people from Oriente. And in that sense, they would go and have private classes and would dance in these special social groups that were all about danzón, or all about waltz, because that meant that they were part Spaniard in one way or another, whether they were carrying a child of a Spaniard or had been with a Spaniard, and so they felt better that. But from those social groups, this gentleman, Ignacio Piñero, who was a soldier, put together 3 other people, and they called themselves the Grupo Oriental, because they were being soldiers in Oriente. They were traveling around and hanging out in there. And through that, he got kind of tired of hearing the danzones, the waltzes. So he put together a sound that we now know as son. So from danzón came son. And this was around 1913. If you give me 1 second here, I'll start finding my music. There we go. So this is considered a song. Very, very simple. No men shines, no lady styling. It's very, very simple. A little step to the side with the person you're dancing with. If you wanted to get fancy, you might go down a little bit, stretch your leg out. You might see that with some of the Cuban dancers. Take your hat off, put it on your foot, and the lady kind of leads you around very slowly. So that was the most outrageous that they would get in this music. Now, if you were listening to the words, I'll start from the beginning. And how many of you understand Spanish? Okay, so about 2/3. Good. That'll save me a little translating. You listen to the words. Again, this is from 1913. Very simple, one trumpet, bongo player, guitar. In other words, don't tell me to shut up. Don't play with the gods. So all the way from the slaves being brought over in 1533, from the western part of Africa to Cuba and Puerto Rico, even in 1913, they were still singing about the gods. So backtracking a little bit, we know that Columbus came with the 3 boats and did his thing, and discovered something that was already here, so I don't know what he discovered. That's me being sarcastic. Basically, you know, the Indians were living in Puerto Rico and in Cuba, and they were free and they were happy and they were running around with very little clothes on, and all of a sudden the Spaniards showed up. The Spaniards brought, besides other things, they brought also illnesses, which killed a lot of the Taino Indians, and also made them work, which they weren't used to, and made them work really hard in gardening and other things. So many of them decided that they didn't want to do it, and their only way out, in their opinion, was to kill themselves. So a lot of them hung themselves and died from various ways. So by 1533, only 40-something years later, from the time that they went first to Cuba and Puerto Rico, already in 40 years, they needed to get more workers because they were killing themselves and they just weren't living anymore. So they went to Africa, and on the western part of Africa and Senegal and places like that, there's still a door today that's made out of wood like a frame. It's called the Door of No Return. Obama went there not too long ago. And basically, when you go through that door, it's not that there's anything on the other side, it's just the ocean. And that's where the boats would be, and they would kidnap them from their families, tie them up, and put them through that door of no return. And they would get onto the boats. And I say these stories because sometimes we think of only 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, but people went through a lot of shit to bring us the rhythms that we have today. And they gave up their lives, they gave up their families, and I know it sounds kind of heavy, but it's a reality. And then later on in life, a lot of people wrote songs that I'm sure that 85 to 90% of the groups that will perform tonight, if I was to get on stage and say, so what was the song that you just danced to? 85 to 90% would not know the name of the song. They won't. I know that for a fact because the first World Latin Dance Cup that I did called World Salsa Championship that we did with ESPN, to put it on ESPN, I had to get the license for the songs that they danced. And I hadn't asked them initially because I didn't think about it. So when ESPN said, now we need the names of the song and the artist, I called everyone that was in the finals that first year, and 90% did not know the song they had just danced to, nor the artist. And that's a shame because a similar story happened at a Congress one time to a big-time DJ, and I knew the song that he was playing, but I like to test people, so I went up to him and I said, Gonya, that song was incredible. What was that song? He said, just a minute, Mr. Torres. Went through his little file, came up, and he said, it was number 3. I said, number 3 of what? He said, I don't know, it's on my CD, I downloaded it, it's number 3. I said, okay, so next time I introduce you as a DJ, I'll introduce you as DJ number 3, right? And he said, no, my DJ name is this. And I said, well, why should I do that if you don't respect the people that played the music, that gave you that music to play? So I beg each and every one of you that if you're performing or if you're teaching a class, it takes 5 seconds. 5 seconds to put the CD in and to say, Bemba Colora, Celia Cruz. Rancan, Tito Puente. You know, Complicación, Tito Puente. Whatever, Llorarás, which has 13 million hits on YouTube, or Mosca de Leon. You know? And then what's going to happen is if you're an instructor, it's going to help you learn a little bit about that song. Like I recently learned that Llorarás had 13 million hits. I was like dumbfounded. It was like, wow. And when I sit in those meetings again with those tango individuals and with those ballroom people that have done so much for their industry, I'm fighting like an uphill battle. Because they say, your people don't even know what they dance to. And people show up late every time. And we go to your rehearsals, you know? They don't even, like in the rehearsal, they don't even dance the routine. You know, they just walk it through. They don't even put the effort in to really test that dance floor. And many of us have seen that over and over again. Most of the artists that could change each and every one of our lives, like I say, a Debbie Allen, or even Michael Jackson's father has come to 2 of my rehearsals in LA. They stand there and they ask me, what are they doing up on stage? They're just walking. So why did they even come? They're not even testing their, because I tell them, well, they're testing more the shoes and the floor, and they're like, but they're not even performing. How can they test their shoes? And these individuals, most of the time when I invite them at night to come see the show, can't come because they have their own shows. So they'll come during the day to see the rehearsals, and they can change each and every one of our lives. But they go like, why? You know, well, when I go to other genres of music, you know, I see people kicking ass, you know. Like when I went to the event that you and Michael put on, you know, they didn't just dance one time, 3 minutes. They danced like, they did the heats, I saw like same couples up there half the day dancing, like busting ass, like over and over and over again, and doing jive and other shit that I don't even know about. But what I did see was a dedication of how hard they were working, and they were giving 100% each time. And so it's really difficult to get people to even acknowledge us or to get a sponsor when it doesn't start from us. Or I like to acknowledge the board of the Houston Salsa Congress for allowing me to do this every year also. And if you get a chance later on and you like what you hear or you learn something here, please let Nathan and the group know, because they don't have to. I offer it for free 48 weeks out of the year in my travels, and maybe half of the congresses say, yeah, why don't you do that seminar? Because the other half don't really believe that it's worthwhile. Because if it's not a 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, it's not important for the dance in their opinion. And it's because they're not interested, so they say, no, you don't have to do it. Nobody will show up anyway. But each and every one of us has a dream, I believe. And dancing or this music helped change that. And again, going back to 1533, those African slaves, when they were brought against their will, what happened when they were on the boats is the only thing that helped them remember their friends and family were there were large wooden crates, and every once in a while they would start playing on them, like a percussional instrument. And it made them feel like, wow, I'm back home, I'm back in Africa, I'm back with my wife and family. But the Spaniards once again got in place. Not that I'm saying that Spaniards are bad guys, but I say the same conference in Spain. But what they did was they said, you know, we feel like you guys feel more animated and you work harder on the boat when you play the crates. But for you to play the crates, you're gonna have to become Christians. That's the reality. So you can pick one day a week, and that's the day that you can play the crates. You know, you can bang on them and make your music and kumbaya, whatever. So they said, yeah, you know, anything to make them feel like they were back at home, because many of them had started committing suicide too. They were jumping off the ships. If you see the movie that Oprah Winfrey put together called Amistad, you'll see that kind of stuff happening. So what they did was they said, yeah, if you go to a home today of someone from the Yoruba religion or someone that's Santero, what you'll find is that on the top of the table, you'll see the Virgin Mary and a cigar and Jesus and all that, because they became Christian. But if you look under the table, you'll see the lion, or you'll see representations of Owatala or Yemaya, which is the ocean, or Chango, or the different saints or the different gods. You'll see that kind of hidden in the house because they don't like the world to know about it. It's a much more of a hidden kind of a thing. Also, if you see somebody with like I saw a gentleman that I know for many, many years, and I saw that he was becoming Santero. He was all dressed in white yesterday, even though most of you were dressed in white. But I could tell he was dressed in white, a different way. But you could see like underneath his shirt, because they don't really supposed to put it out. It's like hidden underneath. You'll see the yellow, the green, the red, and these are from different gods. Or you'll see them with a little wristband. Try when you're dancing with them not to touch it too much, because the more that it's touched, the more they have to like clean it. Not that you're dirty, it's just it has to become pure on their body, and that's why they hide it. So the Yoruba religion is kind of like a hidden secret to a certain degree. And a lot of people say hacen santo, they make themselves saints by going to Cuba, or with a babalu, which is like the higher entourage of the santeros. So all of that was brought by those African slaves when they came. But with them, the number one question that I get asked when I get interviewed every week is, where does salsa come from? And I always say Houston. No, just kidding. Yeah, you guys are awake. Okay. They're waiting for me to say Puerto Rico or Cuba. You know, being Puerto Rican myself, that's what they want to hear. Or they want to hear Cuba, and the Cubans want to hear Cuba. But in my opinion, it comes from Africa. You know, without the rhythms, we wouldn't have Mardi Gras, we wouldn't have all the different themes of music that we have today if it wasn't in 1533 those slaves coming over and bringing us those rhythms. Again, that's my opinion, you can have yours, but that's my answer. And it kind of amazes them sometimes, and then other people that know a little bit, they go, okay. So you heard one song, S.O.N., from Ignacio Piñero with the Grupo Oriental, and now here's another song, and this one was done in 1918. And the thing about this song is called Échale Salsita. And by listening to it, initially you'll think, okay, so that's a song about salsa. No, it's about salsita, it's about sauce. And if you listen to the words, it's like the guy got drunk one night, he spent the night with his head inside of a bowl of soup, and he kept telling everybody, échale más salsita, put some more pimienta, some more hot sauce in it. But in the background, about halfway through the song, the bongo player goes, salsa, but very, very far away. You can barely hear it. And that's documented as the first time that the word salsa was ever in a song, but not the salsa as we dance it and move to it today, but some guy that just decided to scream it out. So here it goes. So again, it's one guitar, the bongos, the conga, and this time it's two trumpets, and this is again Ignacio Piñero.
Salí de casa una noche aventurera, buscando ambiente de placer y alegría. Ay, mi Dios.
So he went out to a party. Oh my God, how much fun did I have? Like some of you last night. I saw. A big soup, that's where he spent the night. So he arrived at the party. Now in the background you'll hear the salsa. And there's a photo of this song that's still used today by many bands. So that's in 1918 to 1924. Supposedly the first time that it's documented that they used the word salsa. But again, it wasn't salsa as we know it today. So as we go through this journey, I'll share with you a couple of books and videos that I would recommend. One is called Roots of Rhythm. It was first written as R-O-U-T-E-S. That's a video, that's a 3-part series by PBS. Yeah, I think you can get it on eBay or one of those that sell stuff. And I strongly recommend it because it'll take you from the African days and a lot of the stories that I'm sharing with you today to the 1970s, 1980s when Gloria Estefan and stuff like that was happening. Another video that I'll share that I'm going to talk about the gentleman later on is Como mi ritmo no hay dos, like my rhythm there's no equal. And that's the life story of Lopez Cachao, which we'll talk about in a little bit. In books, one that is out of print, but you can still get it if you search good enough, is called Salsiology. And it's by a man called Dr. Vernon Boggs, who passed away. But it's one of the most comprehensive and really one that says the truth. A lot of others, when you research things that they say, you find out that it's just their interpretation of a story, not the real story itself. It's basically, if I was to say something to Janet here, by the time it came around the room, it probably would be a different story. And that's what's happened with some books today, is that when you see a story about Eddie Palmieri, and then by the time it gets to being written, it's not the same story anymore. I'll show you a little story. How many of you know who Eddie Palmieri is? Okay, so you know his music. He has a very, very popular song. And it's basically a song of asking for forgiveness and saying that I'll never do it again. And what happened is that he not only has a wife, he had a girlfriend. And not only did he have a girlfriend, he had another girlfriend. So it was pretty popular. And what ended up happening is the wives didn't care, the girlfriends didn't care about the wife, but they really were pissed off at each other because they were like the first girlfriend they had to share. And so one of them got really angry and found out where the other one lived and went to her house with a machete, with an axe, and chopped down the front door and basically chopped up half the house. Problem was that she got the wrong house, and it was the next door neighbor's house. So Eddie Palmieri had to write a song, because obviously then later on his musicians and his wife found out, because they had to work almost a month for free to redo this other lady's house. Okay? So I'm trying to remember the name of the song in my head right now, and in a little bit it's going to come to my tongue, but all the songs have a certain meaning. They may have a funny meaning, may have an interesting story to it, and I'll share some stories of songs that you dance to every night, that you're out there like, yeah, go for it, and you have no idea like where the story came from. And so I'll share some of those stories with you, just like I did with the first two songs there. So I would definitely share or ask you to get Roots of Rhythm, which now has been changed from R-O-U-T-E-S, like the Road to Rhythm, to the more popular Roots of Rhythm, R-O-O-T-S, and it's narrated by Harry Belafonte, and it's pretty interesting. It goes everything from the African days to how soneros were written. You know what a sonero is? Many of you know. Like a great sonero would be Germán Olivera, who's named #1 sonero for a couple years in a row. Another person, Michael Stewart. Another one is Choco Horta, is a woman, is a great sonera. There's just some great soneros out there. Frankie Vasquez is a great sonero, if you know any of these names. Tito Nieves is a good sonero. Mark Anthony has an incredible voice, but can't do soneros for shit, unless it's written down.
So what is a sonero?
And a sonero is, say someone walked into this room right now and was already singing a song like I Want You Back, and all of a sudden in the middle of the verses would say, I just walked into a room and there's about 20 people there, and makes those verses rhyme, but like that.
Yeah, and on the spot.
Like if you were just writing it down in this second. And it takes an incredible talent to do that. You know?
I think Gilberto is good.
Gilberto is great, Manuel is good.
Yeah.
Like at Celia's funeral at St. Patrick's Cathedral, Victor got up there and we never thought he was gonna get down because he was doing Caravan, but he went through Celia's life story in soneros. You come in like with a red dress and the singer's up on stage saying Frankie Vasquez, and he notices you. All of a sudden, the next verse, without you even knowing, if you're not paying attention to what he's singing, he'll be talking about you. Most of the time when I walk in, they'll start singing about me. That's just because they want a job. They're not kidding anybody. So that's what a sonero is. So they'll explain that. And the beautiful thing about soneros is that we have all these wars in the world, the Israelis and the Arabs and all this other stuff. But the way that the soneros are written, the rhymes, and in Roots of Rhythm, you'll find out that that comes from the Arabic way of writing poetry. And so from that Arabic way, and then also the flamenco and the way that they danced and the way that they put their music together has a lot to do with the music that we have today. So when someone comes and says, oh, I have something new, for me it's bullshit, because if we go back in history, there was somebody somewhere somehow that did it. You know, they didn't reinvent the wheel. It's just you got to find out where it came from. So that's a little bit of what a sonero is, and what you can learn in these videos, in these documentaries, I've probably seen Roots of Rhythm 20 times, and each time I see it, I learn something new. But it's a 3-part series also, it's kind of long. There's some new PBS series that have come out about Latin music and about the Puerto Ricans in the 70s, and the music that changed my life, which was the music of Fania in August of 71. Prior to that, I was born in 56, so in 71, I was about 14, 15 years old. And prior to that, I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't want anything to do with being Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in New York, in Brooklyn, and I was American. And I would tell my mom on a daily basis that I had nothing to do with being Puerto Rican. I didn't want to speak Spanish. I didn't want to do anything with Spanish. That it wasn't my fault that I was born with this color or with that nationality. I had nothing to do with it, and I didn't. So I would listen to Michael Jackson. I would listen to Woodstock, and I would listen to rock and roll, kind of the Eagles and stuff like that. But one thing that did happen is that, and I don't know if any of you can relate to it, is that when I heard the music, something would change in me, that my mom could be fighting with her new boyfriend outside, and I didn't give a damn. As long as I could be inside my room and have that little 45 record on of American Pie or Michael Jackson, all of a sudden it was like, nobody could hurt me. Nobody could touch me. Still today, my hairs kind of stand up when I think about it, because I was like this little kid that would just like hide in the room. And they could be killing each other outside. I couldn't care less, because that music was gonna save me somehow, some way. In 1971, we moved to Puerto Rico, which for me was like moving to hell, because I didn't wanna learn the language, I didn't wanna be there. It's the most beautiful island, but I would sit down in the corner with my little brother, who's 7 years younger than me. We would just cry and say, I wanna go back to New York. I just wanna get out of here. Let's run away, let's do whatever. I don't wanna learn this language. I'd go to school and the other kids would make fun of me. And even the teachers would step on my foot and kick my butt. The beautiful thing is, 40-something years later, I'm running around the world with Cheo Feliciano for 10 years. And every time he would sing that song, I would start crying on stage. Because I remember that stubborn little kid that didn't want to be the nationality that they were, or where they came from, didn't want to speak the Spanish. And today, I've grown to become ambassador of this music. I got to be one of the grand marshals at the Puerto Rican Day Parade with 2 million people on the streets in New York. Again, this is the kid that didn't want to be Puerto Rican. And be part of UNESCO and be the first salsa promoter as part of UNESCO, traveling around the world helping kids. All having to do with Latin music. But I didn't start off wanting to do that. I wanted to, at the age of 13, hey, oh, Troy, how you doing? Good, nice to see you.
I'll be black later, okay?
Take your time. Is that kid that didn't want to be Puerto Rican got entrenched into other things. Because again, sometimes the music worked and not every single time it worked. So by the age of 13, this is where I share some of my personal story, is I got involved with drinking and doing drugs. From the age of 13 till I was 29, for 17 years of hell. It started off really good. I felt like I was smarter than everybody else when I do blow, and I could dance for 3 nights in a row without sleep and mix it with some drinking, and I thought I was the sexiest guy in the room. The problem is that after a certain time, you pass that invisible line, where the analogy that I use is that when a cucumber becomes a pickle, it can never become a cucumber again. And once you pass that imaginary line where the drugs and the alcohol don't work anymore, you keep chasing that high that you had when you were 13. You're looking for that. And even though you're peeking out the windows and think the cops are everywhere, towards the end of my using, I'd like to share this one story, one of the few that I can remember. Because there's the old saying that if you can remember the 70s, that means you weren't drunk enough. And one of the few stories I remember is towards the end of my using is telling an ex-girlfriend, that I was gonna leave. And she was like, you need to call. You need to call AA, NA, CA, anything that has an A, you belong in it. Just go, call. And I told her to go to hell. I took my drugs and I ran to a hotel. And I was doing my drugs there, and all of a sudden a crow came, one of those black crows, came to the window. and all of a sudden was looking at me, and I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden it starts going, call, 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 which is the way the crows do their sounds. But all I heard was call. I'm like, you too? So at that time was when you had to carry like a suitcase to have a phone, and with the little Porky Pig antenna and all that stuff. And I called my ex-girlfriend up, and I'm like, you sent a bird over here? And now you've really lost it. You've lost it to the point where you really need help. I said, like, listen to the damn bird, call, call, call. She said, I don't know where you are. How could I send a bird there? And then I realized, I had passed that imaginary line. Something was not quite working, even though I had already for years been peeking out the windows, thinking that the police were following me. Another time, really quickly, is I remember it was like 2 o'clock in the morning to the Hollywood Hills. I was looking for some party that was supposed to start, and they were waiting for me to bring the drugs. And I look back and I see, the lights of the cop car right behind me. I'm like, oh shit, so I took one of the curves and I threw out my stuff. And all of a sudden, when I pulled over to the curb, the car went to the corner and the car passed me, the car that was behind me. And what it was a ski rack. It wasn't a policeman at all. So guess what? For the next 20 minutes, I'm on my knees looking to the grass, looking for my shit. I mean, that's the insanity that happens in a person's life like that. So to be able to have come from that little kid that would hide in the room listening to music, to that became my new addiction, to now being able to do what I do and get on stage and sometimes be a fool, making fun of myself or making fun of the dancers or making fun of the crowd. I get to be not what she wants me to be or you want me to be, but I just get to be me. Because the life that I had before was, if you wanted a clown, I was a clown. If I knew that she would only go out with me if I was a doctor or a real estate agent, then man, you could see me for like a week study on that shit, because I wanted to be what she wanted me to be. Because inside that little boy, that little girl, had gone through so much as a child, in my first years of life, that I knew that if I told you that he had been abused sexually, physically, emotionally, spiritually, as a 2 or 3 year old, and beat up to the point where he was left for dead, this person, from an ex-boyfriend of my mom, that you wouldn't like me. So music helped cover that up. Then later on, the drugs helped cover that up. And today I realize that by talking about it and helping other people that have gone through that, and sharing one-on-one, or 15 in 1, you're only as sick as your secrets. So I don't have to live in that fear anymore. Because fear used to mean, for me, I use acronyms a lot. I have too much time on airplanes, so I take words and I turn them into something else. And for me, the word fear used to mean F-E-A-R. Fuck everything and run. I did that really, really well. And today it means face everything and recover. Because I'm gonna have to face it one way or another, And even though my mom was a very religious, she still is a very religious person. I have a saying that religion sometimes is for people that are scared of hell, and spirituality is for those of us that have already been there. And so we each lived a hell of our own ways. You don't have to share my story. Each one of us has a different road that brought us here. And whether it was a luxury road, or whether it was a nice road, or whether it was one that went through some of the stuff that I just shared with you, but the reality is we ended up in the freeway. And that freeway is this music and this dance. And again, these individuals that I'm going to share with you brought us that music. After the song, which was 1913 to 1924, came an era of another man's name that you should write down, called Arsenio Rodriguez. Arsenio Rodriguez, in the 1930s, lived on a farm in the part of Oriente. He was blacker than this guy's t-shirt. And if you see any of his CDs or his music today, you will find a very overweight man with really dark glasses with a guitar in his hand. And that's Arsenio Rodriguez. Arsenio never got to meet, but I talked to his brother for hours and hours, Raul, before he passed away. And Raul shared with me that they lived on a farm. And because they lived on a farm, Arsenio knew the skin of the animals. So when they would kill the animals for food, he was the first to change some of the cueros, the skins of the instruments that used to be really big, the drums, and turn into what we know today as the congas, or the bongos. We owe a lot of that to Arsenio. Also, one time there was a an animal walking by and had a bell hanging from its neck, and that animal was a cow, so the bell was the cow bell. And he heard something from it, more than what most of us would have ever heard, and he yanked it off the cow. And today, if you see the musicians last night, you saw them using the cow bell, and you see the bongo player or the timbalero doing the clave with the bell, and that's owed to Arsenio Rodriguez. Those are some of his contributions to our music, which is really important because he died penniless. He died penniless because no one acknowledged what he brought to us. And still today, we use all these things of what he brought to the table. Arsenio, when he was 8 years old, was playing with some animals, and a mule, like a donkey, hit him in the head with one of the legs, and he was blind for the rest of his life. So all the things that I just shared with you about Arsenio, he did while he was blind. The cueros, the skin from the animals, the cowbell, he saw more in his blindness than most of us see with our glasses on. Which reminds me of the saying of, you know who Helen Keller was? Lady through the Second World War and all that stuff. She had a saying that she would rather be blind than have vision, than have eyesight and have no vision. And how many of us have many dreams, but we don't have that vision? Or we think about a dream, but we don't have any vision on how we're going to reach there. Well, this gentleman with his blindness had more vision than most of us. You know, he could see things through the instruments and through the music, to the point where he played music, and he was such a genius that it was before its time. So I'll share the next song with you is one of Arsenio Rodriguez's songs. So that's him on the guitar from Cuba. And again, remember that there was the song, which was very simple, and then all of a sudden you had this sound with the trumpets, and the people were like, no way, how do you dance to this? I can't feel it. There was no 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 back then. So this is an example of Arsenio's music. And again, it was way before the salsa as we know it today. He was one of the first to write the word mambo in his songs, but he didn't create the mambo from what those of us that study it, have recalled. Arsenio went to New York and told everybody he was going to New York because he was going to cure his eyesight, which he knew was a lie. But he was hoping that in New York at the Palladium, in those days, in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, that the dancers would listen to his music and that they would appreciate it. But he was wrong. They still didn't like his music, not even in New York. So one day with Tito Rodriguez, which was a very famous Puerto Rican singer, and with Chano Pozo, a conga player, he went to the studio and he created this next song. And the next song, the words are about the dancers. It's that he has a rumba, he has a party going on, but none of you are invited because you don't feel his music. These are the words of the song. So he was kind of pissed off.
Si no tienes swing,
If you don't have no swing,
no vaya a la rumba.
don't come to my party.
Si no tienes swing, no vaya a la rumba. La rumba tiene su swing y todo el mundo lo sabe. La rumba tiene su swing y todo el mundo lo sabe.
So basically he's telling them that, you know, my music's great, you know, but you don't feel it. And a lot of people got insulted by it and stuff like that, so even less people went to see him play. But that was his message to the individuals. Again, that was more like in the 40s. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and go to 1938, which there was a gentleman that happened to be my godfather, passed away at the age of 88. His nephew plays with the Buena Vista Social Club, even though Buena Vista is on its last journey right now, doing its last tour. But his name, the person that plays with Buena Vista Social Club, his name is Cachao. In other words, a small Cachao. And that was the nephew of Israel Lopez Cachao, which was my godfather. And I learned so much from this humble man. But again, if you look at the video that Andy Garcia put together, the actor, which is called Como mi ritmo no hay dos, like my rhythm, there's no equal. the things that I will talk about now, you can hear it straight from Cachao's mouth in that documentary. And basically what happened in 1938, they were playing for Antonio Alcañez's Maravillas, which is a band that was just playing danzones. They were making money, they were doing very well in Havana, they were light complected, they were doing their danzones, their waltzes. But he was very young, and his brother and his sister, they just couldn't handle it anymore. They had danzones up to here. And so they sat down one day, and the sister on the piano did a riff on the piano, and the brother started putting something together, and they are known as the first individuals to put what we know today as the Mambo together, the first Mambo. Now, they didn't know what the word Mambo meant, so when they wrote the first one, they titled it the El Danzón de Otro Ritmo, the danzón of another rhythm, because that's what they felt that it was. Until about a year later, when they found out that Mambo was a story being told to a child in parts of Africa when they're being put to sleep. And they said, you know what, that's what our music is. Our music is a Mambo. It has a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and it's a story. And still to today, when I stand around the dance floor a lot, I don't dance as much as I used to, but I try to think of what story is that dancer telling the dance partner at this time. When they pull them out to dance and all they're doing is churn, 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 patterns, something they learned in a workshop, which they're probably never gonna use again, and that's my opinion. Or they do the challenges, which is great, but I'd like to know when they're gonna ever use that challenge stuff. I get myself in trouble all the time saying things like that. Gets back to the dance instructor. This is the way I'm making my living now. I'm like, great, but I'm thinking about the dancers. You know, teach them something they're going to be able to use on the dance floor. Because when I'm looking on the floor, all I'm seeing is churn, 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 and I don't see them even looking at the dance partner's eyes that they're dancing with. You know, there's a place in LA called Stevens. When I walk into Stevens, everybody looks at me hoping that, you know, I'm going to see something and give them a job or whatever it is, or take them on a trip. And I'm thinking, why don't they look at the dance partner? And then they wonder why they get hit by the elbow, or because they're not paying attention. You know, the beauty is the frame and the picture. The frame being the young man in this case, and the lady being the picture. And if you don't take care of that picture, you know it's going to fall down and break, or you're going to get hurt. How many times haven't we been hit or seen people get hit on the floor, or something happens, they trip over other people that are on the floor? And when Cachao wrote the first Mambo, he was thinking of it as a story, you know, as a beautiful story that when you start off nice and easy with your dance partner, feel them out, but not feel them out like you're thinking right now, not like feel them out, but feel them out with the music. And then in the middle, there's always that opportunity where you can let them go and show off your new shines and your new lady styling, and then you get back together by the end of the song, and if you're lucky, maybe you'll even get a phone number. You know, but that's what the beauty of the dance is. It's such a magical thing. And that's what they wanted to create. So, so we're gonna listen to the first Mambo that was written. This was in 1938. So it starts off like a danzón, like a waltz, and then they say, enough of that shit. And now, so this is the first Mambo, known also as El Danzón de Otro Ritmo. 1938. What ended up happening is Cachao left Cuba, went to New York in 1960, known as one of the best bass players that ever lived. When he would play the bass, he would go and then he would use it as a percussion also. So if you see the video or this documentary, you'll see that he was the first in the world to play the bass, but also use it as a percussional instrument. So it would drive all the other bass players in the world crazy. Like, how is this guy doing this? And so he was considered one of the best bass players in the world. The music would motivate him. By the end of his life, I would take him, say, to the Hollywood Bowl, 20,000 people waiting to hear him, and we'd bring him in a wheelchair or with a cane. He could barely walk at 88 years old. But when he would reach his bass, something magical would happen, and for the next 2 hours, he would be dancing with the bass, he would be going crazy, laying it down, doing whatever. And as soon as the concert was over, there he would be limping again, or in the wheelchair, and doing that whole shit. Like, something like my mom does today, she's in a wheelchair, but when a Gran Combo is playing, all of a sudden she just grabs me and gets me up, and I have to dance 30 seconds with her, and then she's back in the wheelchair. That's what music does to us. It changes something within us that brings out the best in every one of us, and I hope that what I'm sharing has happened to some of you in your life, and I think it has, because you wouldn't have been spending the last amount of time here with me if it didn't affect you in some way or another when you walked into that dance school, or when you went to your first congress or festival, or you were sitting at the bar and all of a sudden they put on a Latin song and you went, holy shit, that's pretty cool, you know? And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're tapping your feet and you're learning what the big controversy between 1 and 2 is all about. You know, we're a family, but we're dysfunctional sometimes. And the 1 and the 2 is a big reason for that. I'm gonna share another quick story with you. There was a gentleman by the name of Bill Graham. Anybody know that name? Bill Graham was the #1 rock and roll promoter in the 60s and 70s. And in the 1940s, he went to a club in New York City on 53rd and Broadway, which was called the Palladium. And what happened when he walked in there, even though he was Jewish, he could feel that the black, the white, the Italian, the Jews were all there together. If it would be today, it would have been the Dominicans too. And they were all in there, and it didn't matter, because as soon as the music started, it didn't matter what race they were all like picking each other up and dancing on the floor, and he was like, wow, this is incredible. This is like a melting pot. So he went back to San Francisco where his offices were, and he created a club called the Fillmore. The Fillmore was like where Jefferson Airplane and Black Sabbath and all these people would play, so it wasn't Latin music, but he wanted that feeling of the Palladium in the Fillmore. He wanted that you could be playing all different types of music, but that it didn't matter where you came from or where you were going, that something happened when you played that music. And then in the 60s, these guys in New York City, at upstate New York, created a concert called Woodstock. Maybe I'm older than most of you, so you don't remember or even heard what Woodstock was, but it was like the biggest rock and roll concert ever. Like over 200,000 people. Ended up being like 500,000 people, because they broke down the fences and just all ran in afterwards. But they had some of the greatest musicians there. And these guys weren't selling enough tickets, so they called Bill Graham up and said, Bill, you're the biggest. We need your help. You know, can you start selling tickets for us? Can you do this? And he said, the only way that I'll do it is there's a band here in San Francisco. I want them to play at Woodstock. And they said, absolutely not. No way. We're already full. We can't have any more band. So then I can't help you. About 2 weeks later, when they started sweating and weren't selling tickets, they called him up again. And he said the same thing. He said, you know what? I have a band here and I want them to play. They said, you know what? We're going to throw them in the middle of the afternoon. That's it. So he said, okay, now I'll help you. And Woodstock became this incredible thing, because Bill Graham had that type of influence. He brought Crosby, Still and Nash, he brought a lot of other things, but there was this one band that no one had heard of, and he wanted them to play there. He was hit on that. He would not help if they didn't play. So all the bands showed up at Woodstock, and in the middle of the afternoon, some of them started doing drugs. This one particular band did not know when they were going to play, so they dropped some acid. And still to today, if you see interviews of this band, they will talk about, like, when he was playing the guitar, how he thought it was a snake. So when you see his face, he's like this, and thinking like this. And he's like, yeah, you know, I didn't know what the hell was going on, because what happened is, after they dropped the acid, like a half an hour later, they were told that they were going on stage. And they thought they were playing that night, and they were playing in the afternoon. So they got up on stage and they did their thing, and him with a snake up there and all this stuff. But because of Bill Graham, because you never know where shit's gonna happen, because of Bill Graham, and because he went to 53rd and Broadway to the Palladium, and because he insisted that a band play, today we have in our lives the beautiful band of Santana. That was the first time that Latin music was played at a rock and roll. And Bill Graham could see further than most people, and he saw this was the future. So they played Oye Como Va, which was one of Tito Puente's songs, And most people thought it's only Santana's music, but Tito Puente bought his first house with the residuals from Oye Como Va. You know, and today we hear the music and we dance the cha-cha to it, but you know, that's a little bit of the story of Black Magic Woman, Evil Ways, the sad music of Santana, and how we get to have Santana in our lives today was because of a man named Bill Graham, insisting that this Latin music had to be played, or this riff of Latin music had to be played at this rock and roll concert. So that's that story. Now, what ended up happening with Cachao is that he came in 1960s to the United States, and everyone wanted to hire him. Ray Barreto wanted him, Tito Puente hired him, Tito Rodriguez, everybody, because he was such a great musician. But he's also a very humble man, so he escaped to the capital of Cuba, which is Coral Gables in Florida, and that's where all the Cubans live, and no one could find him. And he was only doing bar mitzvahs, weddings, funerals, divorces, and he was dying of hunger. And Andy Garcia decided he was gonna find him, because this was his idol. And he made this documentary looking for him. And he found him down there in Coral Gables, and he realized that he had no money, no nothing, so he put Gloria and Emilio Esteban together to make a concert for Cachao, and it's documented in the documentary. And the first song that, not the first song, the first Grammy that Cachao has ever won was Master Sessions Volume 1, and that's from that concert. So if you want to hear a pretty cool CD, it's Cachao Master Sessions Volume 1, and you'll hear everything from danzones to the waltzes, all the way to that first mambo that was written, to the new version of the mambo that was put together by great musicians like Mambo Rivera, Jimmy Bosch, some of the people that we know today, Paquito de Rivera, and they put together this music. So here's the new version of that mambo song that you heard. That's the dance song, that's the waltz, and now the mambo. So this is in 1990. So they took that old song and created this version. And for people that didn't know what it was, they even had Mambo Rivera and some other people do a coro, and here's the coro. So again, from 1938 all the way to the 1990s, that's the way that music changed. But a lot of people from Hollywood love the mambo, but they didn't quite know who Cachao was and had never really heard that version. They had heard another version of another Cuban that basically lived in Mexico City, and he had kind of put his own 2 cents into the mambo. And people like Charlie Chaplin and other directors from the 1940s started doing these movies with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and Gina Rowland and all these other people, having them dance and put it as the Fury Mambo, the Fury music, the hot Latin sounds. And what it was is they took this other guy's music and put that into their movies. And the people thought that was what the mambo was all about. And so a lot of the people from the New York City area would go down to Miami or would go to Mexico City and dance to the songs. And they didn't even need a partner because this was it. That's not it. They would dance by themselves, put their Panama hats on. We have all these Jewish people, all these Italians singing their Latino. So whenever I want a good laugh, I sit in my house and I put some videos I have on. And then it started playing and all these people dancing, doing like the twist. But Perez was kind of a crazy guy. He would make like these cat sounds and stuff when he wanted his musicians to stand up. And the poor musicians would have to wear the curtains of my mom on their sleeves. I don't know if you ever saw these mixed. But every time I look at it, it reminds me of the curtains my mom used to have. And that made Perez Prado a pretty famous guy. The problem was when he was in Cuba, he wouldn't pay his musicians. So that's why he would run to Mexico City all the time. He would bring in new musicians in Mexico City and use them, but in Cuba, he was pretty much hated. So we've come to the point, well, we have about 15, 20 minutes. We've come to a point where this is a very important part of my life. literally, because that building that I talked about on 53rd and Broadway, New York, if you ever go to it, it's called 1500 Broadway. It's a really large blue building now, but it used to be 2 stories. And on the first story was like a pharmacy and a milkshake kind of place that you could have something to drink after you left. The second floor, which was a dance studio that a gentleman had, and it wasn't doing very good after the Second World War and the Korean War. So what happened is a gentleman, a Latino by the name of Federico Pagani, went there and said to the gentleman that owned it, you know, what happens if I bring you Latinos here? And he said, I don't care if they're yellow, black, blue, whatever, as long as they bring me green, we're cool. So Federico Pagani, his biggest thing was not to convince the owner of the studio, but to convince the Latinos to leave the barrio, to come to the mid-Manhattan, to 53rd and Broadway. And I was in New York 3 days ago, and I don't go to New York without going to 53rd and Broadway. I stand on that corner, there's a subway station that comes out right there, because so much of the music and what we do today comes from that corner. When it was a 2-story building, on that second floor, they converted the Heyman Ballroom to what we know today as the Palladium. And it was like the Mecca for the Arabs, that they go there once in their lifetime. To go to the Palladium or to dance there that was it. And my mom used to go there every Wednesday night, because that was the day that they gave the Latinos. But again, if you ever saw the movie West Side Story, that's what the problem was. You were born in the barrio, you went to school in the barrio, you got a boyfriend in the barrio, you got married in the barrio, you had a child in the barrio, you got divorced in the barrio, and you died in the barrio. You didn't leave the barrio unless you had a job outside the barrio, Spanish Harlem, and you did that very carefully, and you got home before it got too dark. Because if you went too far this way, there was the Italians. If you went too far this way, it was the blacks. To this far was the Polacks. And so anywhere you went, that was their area, and you had your area. It was the same way. If they came into your area, there was another war. So if you ever saw West Side Story, that's the Jets and the Sharks, that's what it was like. But my mom, every Wednesday night, would throw her dress in a bag down 3 flights of stairs, and then she would go down and tell her parents that she was going to her friend's house, which they knew was bullshit after the 3rd week. And she would pick up her bag and she would walk 10 blocks. Now, these 10 blocks were other people's neighborhoods. Still to today, my mom will not tell me what happened in those 10 blocks. She'll start crying, she'll start giving me a guilt trip, but she won't tell me. So God knows what happened in those 10 blocks, but it didn't matter. The next Wednesday, she walked those 10 blocks again, because she was only 15 years old, and she would go and get her makeup done. You girls know what that's all about. Making her look at 21 so that she could go into the Palladium. I guess she had a false ID or whatever. But the thing was, she would get there, and she knew that from the moment she walked in, maybe some of you have ever felt this, the moment you got to the Congress, that first time you get to that rehearsal, nothing mattered at home. That fight with the boyfriend or girlfriend, or the fight with the parents, the illness that was happening, it didn't matter. For those 2 hours, my mom said she was baby, and baby just loved to dance. And her father dying of cancer, a heart attack, her mom having cancer, her brother having diabetes, none of that mattered. From the moment she walked in, it was like, I'm home. You know, nothing can hurt me while I'm here. And if you look at the movie Mambo Kings that I was involved with in 1991, you'll see Antonio Banderas and Armando Sante, when they walk into the Palladium, it's like they just went to heaven. And that was exactly how it was. So if I was to ever come back in another life, which I haven't had anybody come back and talk to me yet, but for people that believe in reincarnation, I would like to be involved with 1948 to 1960. You know, I'd like to be able to come in those years. Even though that Palladium era had a lot to do with me, because during those first years of my mom going to the Palladium, when she was 16 and a half, she met somebody. He happened to be really involved with drugs and alcohol, but at the same time, he wooed my mom, and 9 months later I was born. So I'm a product of the Palladium. One of those bachata nights. It's a little too dark in there. And no, that really happened in Sweden. There was a lot of white girls jumping up and down. They looked like Q-tips. Just jumping up and down. But all the gentlemen were kind of dark. And 9 months later, I was doing a rehearsal in Gothenburg in Sweden, and there were 3 kids in the room, and they were all like 9 months old. And I was like, all these kids are screaming in here. Can we do something about it? And are they all the same age? And they were like, yeah, it was that bachata room last year. So it was all 9 months old. So I was like, okay, yeah, I get the idea. So be careful when you go to those rooms. And not somebody like me will come about and be here many, many years later. So I'm grateful for the Palladium in many ways. My mom loved the music. My mom lived to go to the Palladium every Wednesday night. And in the Palladium, they would listen to 3 different bands. And the first band that they would listen to would be Machito and his African All-Stars. Anybody know what that band is? Okay. Machito and his African All-Stars were an incredible band from Cuba, Machito. And his musical director was Mario Bauzal. That's a whole other hour story for him. But if you can look up his name, Mario Bauzal, he was just a genius. And he was his musical director. Also, if you know the song Ay Jose, that was Graciela, and Graciela was Machito's sister. Okay, so it was all involved in that family. Also, they came from a family of 11 kids, and the father kept them hidden in Cuba during the Machado revolution that was going on in the 1930s, and kept them inside. And to entertain them, he would teach them college courses, but he also would teach them instruments. So all 11 of the 10 girls and 1 boy, Mario, I feel sorry for him, is all of them had to learn instruments. And till today, the great-grandchildren of that family still keep the music alive, and they're a group that's called Ana Caona. That Cheo Feliciano made that song very famous, Ana Caona. Well, in the 1930s, those ladies were the first group to leave Cuba and go to Europe and play music that had horns and instruments of all kinds, representing Cuba, and called Ana Caonas. That's a little bit of that. And so Mario married one of those 11 sisters, and so his brother-in-law was Machito, and he helped him with the band. He also was a gentleman that was very loving and caring, and when it had to do with musicians on the street that didn't have a place to live, his wife would be pissed at him all the time, but he had 2 couches, and the 2 couches were always full with somebody sleeping on them. But he had an ear of somebody that was famous, that was gonna become famous. And one time, on one of the couches was Ella Fitzgerald, a great jazz singer. And on the other couch, one day was a trumpet player that no one would give work to. And so at one time, he called his boss at the time, which was Cab Calloway, a great jazz musician that has a song, Heidi, Heidi Ho, and said, I have this guy that I want you to use today because I can't come in because I'm sick, which was a lie. He just wanted to give the guy an opportunity. And the rest is history, and that was, I'm forgetting names today, Dizzy Gillespie. Okay, so it was the famous Dizzy Gillespie. And Dizzy always owed him a favor, so what he did was, many, many years later, he said, I owe you a favor, I have a big band now, I'm famous, but I'd like to mix jazz music with Afro-Cuban music. And how do we do that? So he introduced him to a musician called Chano Pozo. And Chano was a conga player, and he didn't speak English, and Dizzy didn't speak Spanish. You're gonna find this interview in Roots of Rhythm. And Dizzy Gillespie says, we didn't speak the language, but we spoke music. So we wrote a song, and the first song that we wrote was the first song of Afro-Cuban and jazz together, and it's known as Manteca. And at the beginning of the song, it's very like sizzling and the bass, and you feel the musicians standing up and sitting down, and they considered Manteca like when you're frying like a piece of chicken, like the lard, and it was like it was sizzling, and then it would come down, and it was sizzling, and it would go down, and they considered that was why they called it Manteca. Let me see if I can find it here. This is Manteca. So the first Afro-Cuban jazz song. So it's like sizzling. Starting off really slow. Now all the horns are gonna stand up. Dizzy on the trumpet.
Who are the authors?
Huh?
Who are the authors?
The artist Dizzy Gillespie. And every album of his, the best of Dizzy Gillespie, you will find that song. Also, another quick thing about Cachao was that he was the creator and his family of what we know today as jam sessions, descargas. Because everything would happen like after 3 in the morning when they were playing at a club, they would all go over to Cachao's house, and because they were all all musicians there, they would all get their instruments and start off slowly, and a guy would do soneros. One guy would do soneros just to the rhythm of the congas, and then all of a sudden it would build up, just like Manteca did just now, build up, and then all of a sudden, bam, it would explode. And one of those songs is one that you're probably very familiar with, which is this. Starts off just with the clave. So imagine you're walking into Cachao's house and they're just jamming. They're just jamming little by little. And so he has all CDs of just jam sessions that they did. But this is one of the most famous. It's called, most of you know it as Ave Maria Morena, but its real name is called Lindo Yambu. Everybody would get into a coro. Just building up little by little. For about 4 minutes. And then they go into the part that kind of explodes.
Está Alberto el militar que salió en la procesión. Está Alberto el militar que salió en la procesión. Con tricono y con bastón echando un bote a la mar. Óyelo.
As a tribute to Cachao, towards the end of the movie Shall We Dance, or Baila Conmigo, really, Dance With Me, which I choreographed all the salsa parts of that movie, you'll see that we use that song. We use Cheyenne dancing with Vanessa in one of the clubs at the end of the movie. And it was our way of giving tribute to Cachao. We also, before he passed away, we were fortunate enough to be able, Andy Garcia and myself, to get him a star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. So in front of a Cuban club called King in Hollywood, he has his Lopez Cachao thing. But going back to the Palladium, in 1948 when it was created, to 1965, really to 1960 was when it was hot there. There were 3 bands, and one of the bands was Machito's band. So this is an example of Machito's band. This is Machito. All the horns, they stand ups and downs. And this is the second band. This is Tito Puente's band. So you always had, Machito always opened up. And then Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez would fight with each other. Because they always wanted to be the last one. Because whoever was last, that meant that the girls that were still there, you might be able to take them out to breakfast. But they never talked about it like that. No matter how many times I asked Puente why they had this rift between them, he would never answer. That's one question he would never answer to me. But we kind of found out. Tito Rodriguez was a very nice looking man, and he kind of was a ladies guy. And Puente tried, but Puente would try to do it with his timbales and with his looks and his funny faces on stage to get the girls to laugh with him. But they ended up having a rift. The song I'm about to put on is an important song to me. It's called Complicación, Complication, and it's important to learn sometimes why people write songs, because I had no idea when the first times I heard this song what it was about, but I sat down with the person that wrote it and then found out a story that really affected my life. So maybe you can listen to the words a little bit. Complication, I loved her, she loved me, but in an unfortunate moment, she was gone. Probably happened to many of us in this room, but if we think of it as a love story, you know, you have a relationship, not a relationship, or marriage, and then one day it's no longer there and they're gone. Or am I the only one? You guys can relate? Just want to make sure you're still awake. So, the reason that this song is important to me is that it's about a love relationship, but it's not about a boyfriend and a girlfriend or a husband and wife. It's about a gentleman that wasn't able to be a dad to his daughter, and then all of a sudden he got to meet his daughter, he got to have a relationship with her, and she loved him and he loved her, and then unfortunately she died in a car crash, and she was gone. And why was this important to me? Because the gentleman that wrote it, Francisco Ababella, a great percussionist from Cuba, said, I know your story, Albert. I know that you were involved with drugs from 13 till you were 29, then you got sober, and you have 2 kids out there, but you don't really know where they are, and you know what? You need to go out there and find them. You need to go out there and find your 2 daughters, and because one day they might not be there, or you might not be there. And it would be really unfortunate that you don't get to know who your kids are, or that they don't know who their father is. So walk through the fear, go to the other side, and make it happen. And so this song, Complicación, made it happen for me. And today I have the most incredible relationship with my 2 daughters. I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. And it all started because of this song, Complicación. Okay? So you never know what songs might help change your life. So that was a Tito Puente song. And the next song that I'll put on is Tito Rodriguez. And one of the reasons that the ladies loved him was his voice. Roberto Santa Rosa tries to emulate him.
Dime cuándo tú verás.
That's what my mom, every time I spit it on, my mom is like,
No sé si.
I have to take her out of the wheelchair, change her diapers and stuff. So that's what that is. But again, Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez did not like each other. And I just found out recently a song that to Tito Rodriguez Jr. that his father wrote to Tito Puente. So really listen to the words. You're one of the first to hear the song. So you gotta really listen to the words. It's Tito Rodriguez singing to Tito Puente.
A ti te han dicho payaso que el que se va no hace falta y tú sigues diciendo que eres number 1. Esa bomba no la tiren en San Juan. Tu amor está confundido, esa ambición te hace daño. Están pasando los años y ahí mismo estás. Esa bomba no la tires para acá, pero esa bomba no la quieren en San Juan.
So, if you heard the words, it was pretty insulting. You know, you think you're number one, you're a clown. Later on, he even says, Rivalry says that you don't even play the timbales well. They pretty much went after each other.
What was that song?
That song is called Esa Bomba. So, I want to share a couple stories and maybe one or two songs with you, and then we'll close. I want to thank you for your time, and if you can just remember at least one of the stories and share it with someone else, you don't have to remember everything. If you can at least remember one thing, and one thing that I do beg of you is that if you are teaching classes or if you have a teacher, push them and tell them, okay, the song that you're playing, what's the name of the song and who's it by? It's the only way we're gonna get educated, and other genres of music are gonna start respecting us. Because we work really hard and we have this beautiful music and beautiful dance, but the world doesn't pay attention to us because sometimes we don't pay attention to ourselves. So it has to start in-house. One of the stories is that in 1991, I was fortunate enough to work on Mambo Kings with Antonio Banderas and Armando Sante. And 10 years on that same movie was Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, Machito's son, which was Mario Grillo Jr., playing Machito in the band. What happened 10 years later is I asked Mario Grillo, I said, can you come to LA with the band and let's celebrate the 10 years of the movie? So we did that on Friday night in LA, and it was incredible. It was sold out, it was a great thing, and the hotel was right next door, so the musicians went next door, except for Mario Grillo. Mario Grillo turned the wrong way, and he was a little drunk, and he fell down, or slipped, or something. I don't know the particular thing, but what did happen was he broke his leg next to the swimming pool. And so we had to take him to the hospital. They couldn't do anything. The next day he played in San Francisco sitting down and playing the timbales. Sunday he went to New York. Monday he went to the doctor. The doctor said, it's too swollen, I can't do anything. So come back next Monday and we'll operate on the leg. So for a week he went to his regular job with the crutches on. I didn't even know he had a regular job. He's one of the few musicians that do. And it's a joke. So he went to his regular job. And then the following Monday, he had the operation. And on Tuesday, I called him up, and he's screaming on the phone. And I'm like, Mario, calm down, calm down. He said, no, I can't calm down. And he's screaming and screaming. He said, have you seen the news? And I said, yeah, I saw the news, but you're okay, right? And he said, yeah, they operated yesterday. But did you see the Twin Towers? They went down today. And it was the Tuesday that the Twin Towers went down. And I didn't know that Mario worked at Windows of the World, which is at the top of the Twin Towers. So all of his employees died in the Twin Tower thing. And if he hadn't broken his leg in LA, he would have been there. He was there the week before every single day. He had never missed a day of work in 8 years. Why am I sharing this story is that nothing happens by mistake. Even that we're here and that I can learn from you guys or that you've heard something from me, there's a reason why we're here. And why we're at the Houston Congress, why things happen, why we changed maybe a situation in our life. And what I told him, and he was like thanking me and saying, you know, you saved my life. And I said, it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with in 1991 we worked together, 10 years before. So sometimes shit happens that we're not happy about, but we don't know how it might affect us in 10 years, 20 years from now. But nothing, again, happens by mistake. There's a reason. And what I always have to remember that, you know, again, I'm not a religious person, I'm spiritual, but that there is a God. And for me, all that matters to me is that I know that there's a God and it's not me. And for me, God is G-O-D, and it's good, orderly direction. Some good information, some good stuff that's out there that just wants the best of this guy, Albert, that went through hell as a child, that went through drugs, and now is a pretty happy person that travels all over the world and does something that they love to do, which is get up on stage or discover dancers, help them travel and live their dreams. Because each and every one of you has a dream. And the only person that can stop you from living that dream is you. Because every time you point the finger, like I used to do at my mom or my dad or my teacher, there's 3 fingers pointing back at me. That's why I point like this. There's 3 fingers pointing back, and I'm responsible for my own actions. And when I do that, I realize that the only person that's stopping me from living that dream is me. So I need to put one foot in front of the other. Some days it's easier than others, and some days it's kind of tough. But the reality is that every morning when I wake up, I try to realize that today's a new day, and I'm gonna try to be the best Albert I can be. That's all I can do. I can't be the Albert you want me to be, and I can't be the religious Albert my mom would love me to be, and I can't be what everybody else, or even what my daughters want me to be. I can just be the best dad I can be, and I can be the best grandpa I can be. But that's what the package brought. Because when I try to change that, I find myself wanting to have a drink or do some drugs. Because I get into the poor me syndrome, poor me that I'm not a good grandfather, poor me that I'm not around enough, and then sooner or later that poor me becomes poor me a drink. You know, and I don't want to end up having to be in that situation. Because there's too many hours on the plane by myself. I just keep writing the words, and the words of the songs. So, that was one of the stories I wanted to share with you. The other one is, how many of you know who Celia Cruz was? You know what was her favorite song? Some people think it's Guantanamera, some people think it's La Negra Tiene Tumbao, or Caravan, but it's a song that Johnny Pacheco and her wrote together, and it's called Canto a La Habana. And it's Canto a La Habana because when she left in 1960 Cuba, she was not allowed to come back into Cuba. And she went there, and she made it to the airport when her mom died, but they wouldn't let her in to the mom's funeral. And then when she died, she wanted to be buried there, and they wouldn't allow that. So this is Canto a La Habana.
Oye, y ese.
So this is Canto a La Habana. And Celia herself told me this was her favorite song because it's the only song that reminded her of her island. Because the song takes her through the journey of every single town of Cuba. If you have the time, we don't have the time, unfortunately. You'll hear the beginning of it. But she talks about every single town in Cuba. Different towns, Matanza, but then she says, but there's nothing like Havana. I always close saying a couple words, and then I close with one song by my good friend Jimmy Bosch. The words that I share with you is basically, I may not be the man that my mom and dad or the people that raised me wanted me to be. I may not even be the dad that my daughters wanted me to be. But thank God I'm not the man I used to be. And through this music, and through the slaves and what they went through to bring us that music and those sounds in 1533, and the people that arrange music and that put songs together for us to be able to do that 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, I'm able to live a pretty happy life. I got to be in Houston today, next week I'm in another town, and 48 weeks out of the year I'm traveling every year. It started out as a dream, and sometimes it's a nightmare, but it's still a dream that's come true for me. And when I get to see little kids like Kevin Tellez that I took when he was 6 years old and won the World Latin Dance Cup. And last week I was in New York watching a play of Emilio and Estefan's wife, life when they were kids. It's called On Your Feet, Up Your Feet, or On Your Feet. And see Kevin up there on stage playing the part of Emilio when he was a kid. And he's 9 years old and he's on Broadway. It's for every kid that we help and we put on stage is one less kid that's on the streets. And each of us has the power to help one of those kids. I saw little kids that are gonna be in the afternoon shows at 2 o'clock. If we go there and we support them, you know, it fills their life up. It fills them up with something. I was also at a school in New York City with 40 kids that are all coming to LA this year, but really, really poor kids. I mean, they're from the barrio in the Bronx. And on the wall was, little children are little children, no, little people are little people, but they're still people. And that sometimes we forget because we see that they're so small, that it's not gonna affect their lives, but you know, they're still people. And if we take that 2 minutes out just to give them some love, like Nelson Mandela said, no child is born hating anything. That's something that they learn, so we can help them learn to love something, or we can learn, or teach them how to hate something. But we as adults are responsible for some of that. And can't change the world, but I'm trying to do my little planting the seed here and there. And this music helps me do it a lot easier. And I ask you guys to maybe keep that going, you know, in your own little piece of your world. I close this session always with, again, I thank you because I can't do this by myself. It would be pretty boring for me to be here alone. And that you're still awake, that's great. You know, I hope that you learned something through it. And please, I don't do this alone, please thank the board, or Nate, or Millie, or those people out there for allowing me to do this. And then hopefully I can do it again next year to a whole other group of people that haven't been here. And that's how we keep it alive. How many of you know who Jimmy Bosch is? Okay, good. Any of you know who Tito Puente was? How many of you? You can raise your hand. Okay, almost see, that's great. Most of the time when I ask that question, 10% of the room raises their hand, which scares the crap out of me, because it's been 16 years since he passed away in June. It'll be 16 years. And when 10% of the people raise their hand, that means 90% don't know who he is, and he gave 117 CDs of music to us. And we dance to his music every single night, and we don't know who the gentleman was. And he helped create the Celia, which 100% of the people always raise their hand, or helped bring La Lupe to us, you know, and other great musicians like Cachao and stuff. So Puente was like an uncle to me, so I take it kind of serious when people don't recognize the contributions of music that he brought to us when he made 117 CDs of music. But Jimmy Bosch is one of our guys today. How you doing, buddy? This is one of the gentlemen that's on the board. He's the treasurer.
Thank you.
And one of the people that helped influence me many years to come to this event, which I do about 42 events a year, but there's very few that are really, really close to my heart, and this is one of them. The Houston Congress is one of those events that wherever I go around the world, when they ask me, you know, can you tell me in the States where to go? You know, obviously I say LA as the first one, but Houston is usually the second or third one that I mentioned for them to come to, because of the hard work that these guys do. Plus, I don't know if you're aware, that's the only Congress in the world that the money that they make and the profit goes all to help a kid go to university. It all goes to a benefit. It's a nonprofit, and that always reaches my heart. That's really something very special you guys do. So the last song that I want to bring to you guys' attention is a song that's pretty heavy by Jimmy. And what happened is Jimmy was playing a concert in South America, and he got news that his brother had just died. And so he got on the plane, and he wrote this song. It's a song that most of you dance to every night, and I see a lot of the people doing the photo of the song. It's called Otra Oportunidad. Now, the words mean another opportunity. And the reason I close with this is for various reasons, but one is it starts off kind of sad because it has a beginning, and then has a middle, and then it has an ending. And the middle to the ending, the music even gets louder without me even pushing a button. And it's all about, not about his brother anymore, but it's about each and every one of us has been given another opportunity. Another opportunity to live your dream. Another opportunity that his brother did not get to live anymore. His brother has the same disease that I have, which is addiction. But for some reason, I buried most of my friends as a child, and that were doing drugs along with me. And somehow a reason, maybe this is the reason that I'm still here, to do conferences like this, or to run around the world and do the things that I do with this music. But his brother didn't get that chance. And so he wrote this song, which is really important when I put it on, if you close your eyes, and some of you may have had a friend or a family member, or even yourself, like in my case, have gone and lived through this. But get on the other side, that through meetings like this here at the Houston Salsa Congress, we are all given another opportunity, whether it is to take a lesson, to sit in this conference, to get on the stage and dance, the DJ. Hopefully you'll know the songs that you're DJing too, and get to live whatever dream that you want. To be a mother, a father, or, you know, I never thought I'd be a grandfather, you know, but here I am, you know, 3 grandchildren they're my life, you know. I mean, every Wednesday we Skype each other. They look forward to that. You know, I never had anybody look forward to seeing me unless I was bringing drugs. You know, and I have 3 grandchildren that just can't wait to get on the Skype to talk to me and see what part of the world I'm in. You know, I don't know how excited they'll be about Houston, but, you know. They're used to like Dubai or Lebanon, somewhere out there, like in Israel. So this song is called Otra Oportunidad. And I really would love if you can just really center yourself and listen to the words of it.
Mi gente, yo les quiero decir de una experiencia que le pasó a un familiar. Mi hermano ha perdido la vida solo en la calle, sin que nadie lo supiera. Consejos no cogió, mensaje no escuchó, y por eso él no está conmigo. Estamos todos heridos con la muerte de mi querido hermano. Dios, quítame este dolor. Hoy yo sé que yo no tengo que vivir de esa manera, en la calle perdido. Solo por hoy yo no quiero beber, no me quiero endrogar. Yo no quiero morir, yo lo que quiero es vivir.
So that's the beginning. Kind of sad, you know, his brother's dead. Family is really hurt by it. That's not the whole story.
Nuestros familiares, tanto que han sufrido, su dolor es incomparable. Familia, yo sé que aquí toditos identifican con la insanidad. Sufrir, nadie quiere más. Lo que aquí queremos es recuperar. Y ahora se ha dominado mi vida porque me han dado otra oportunidad. Yo estoy aprendiendo cómo vivir un día a la vez. Solo por hoy.
This is the part that I always laugh because I go around the dance floor, everybody is solo por hoy. They have no idea what they're even talking about, or what the song is all about.
Hoy quiero vivir la vida con claridad.
You can hear the music starting to get louder, because now it's not about his brother or that sadness. It's about we have a life ahead of us. He wants to get up every morning, he wants to smile, laugh.
Si así lo dice el destino, pues que sea así.
So that's what destiny wants.
Gracias a Dios por dejarme vivir.
If you ever see Jimmy doing this song, you'll see when he plays it, he starts jumping up and down. He's so full of energy, because he remembers his brother. But what did we learn from his brother is that we don't have to end up that way. You continue hearing the song, you'll continue hearing it louder, because now it's not, again, about death, it's about celebration of life. It's about the celebration of, we've each, every single one of us, has been given another opportunity. You know, I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of the last hour and a half of my life. And, you know, probably one of the most important things that I do is not being on stage and being a clown up there. But after my grandchildren and my sobriety is this session, is being able to share a little bit of the history of salsa with people, a little bit of my life. And most of the time later on, or sometimes even after this meeting, people stop me and say, you know, I can relate because this happened to me, or I've never told anybody this happened to me, but you were open enough to share this, and I want to share with you that I don't want to carry this around anymore. And so they send me emails, and you know, that's one of the most beautiful things, to be able to have this family wherever I go around the world, and you guys become part of that family, you know, with me. Yeah.
Albert, before we wrapped up, I just wanted to interject real quick because I sense it was coming to a close. And you said some very kind words about the Houston Salsa Congress. I definitely wanted to return the favor and acknowledge everybody that this Congress would not be what it is without Albert's help and guidance and too, that she's been with us from the beginning. Back when we were at UH campus in a practice hotel. and he's been a great guidance, a great inspiration, a great mentor. We take it, and we're very grateful for his coming and helping out, as well as this workshop. I think it's very personable, and I think it's an excellent touch. Now, I'm really glad you guys were able to participate, and I'd like to just for a moment go ahead and just acknowledge Albert for all that he does.
I saw the potential of this event. I go around many congresses, and some of them listen to me, some of them don't, and they suffer the consequences. But they were open enough, and we were at this university. And I remember saying, you know, I can't even bring my mom to this place. You know, this is like a quinceañero. It's great what you guys are doing, but it's so small and it's never gonna grow. And we gotta take some risk, and we gotta take it to the next level. We gotta find, even if it's an old hotel, and start from there and then go to another hotel. And then we ended up here. Now we're too big for this hotel. We gotta find maybe the Hyatt, which I understand has the biggest ballroom in Houston, or we have to find somewhere, because I think we're at 1,900 people now, you know. And again, we started at, what was there, 100 people there, maybe?
200.
And I remember looking out and going, wow, okay, I hope I get paid. It was crazy, but, you know, all I could do is share the guidance of what I've learned, and each of you have learned through your own lives because of the roads that you've taken. You've gained certain knowledge that I don't have. And by sharing it with each other, we get to learn more and more. I've had Jimmy Bosch in not necessarily in this room, but I've had him at this conference and closed with his song, and I've watched him cry. You know, I've watched him come up and give me a hug and say, you know, thank you for sharing my music in your seminar. You know, I thought he was gonna like get pissed off or something, but he was really happy about it, and hopefully it can help each and every one of you. In the Yoruba religion, which I'm not part of any religion, but I believe in Jesus and in God and all that, and I consider myself spiritual. But in the Yoruba religion, they cross their arms like this a lot, and they say muchache. So many, many blessings, and I do that a lot from stage, and when I'm with a lot of people that I can't hug everyone, I go muchache, which is, I wish you a lot of blessings, I wish you a lot of health, and more than anything, I wish that all of your dreams can come true. Whatever dreams that they may be, as small as they are, this music and the history of this music can help you, as long as you're open to listening to it and open to learning. Communication is one of the most important things, and for each and every one of us not to take each other for granted, or to not take for granted the people that are in our lives, and we may have issues with them, and you know what, it's just not worth it. Like I tell the dancers every night before they go on stage, is like, if I was living in your house and I didn't pay you rent, sooner or later you'd have to ask me to leave. No matter who I am or what I am, I have to leave. You know, there's a responsibility there. But how many of us allow people to rent space in our head for free? That they've never paid us rent, and they live there, and they're like, you're a piece of shit, you're never gonna amount to anything, you're never gonna be a good girlfriend or a good boyfriend. You know, what the hell are you thinking about taking and doing a business on your own? Are you crazy? You know, you're never gonna be a good dancer. Why are you taking those classes? Any of you can relate to that? Yeah. And so I still have those voices in my head. Sometimes I think I'm schizophrenic. It's like, get out. So I always say, no hay cama para tanta gente. There's not enough room in the bed for so many people. So please, you gotta leave. You haven't paid me rent since the day I was born. So out of here. and I'm gonna go and live a happy life today. I walked into this room earlier than you guys, but with a lot of fear. Are they gonna like me? Am I gonna say the right things? And you know what it is? Just walk into that fear and realizing that on the other side, it's gonna be okay. You know, and hopefully I've said something that will be good for you, or next time you see me walking around, because you'll see me walking around a lot, I observe a lot. You'll see me maybe in a different light than that guy with the "don't fuck with me" look on my face, which is usually what I have. I have like this serious face, but I'm not that way. I'm just a little boy inside that just wants to be loved and hugged, you know? And just sometimes he's a little scared, and so he carries this face like, "don't mess with me," you know, because that's what helped me survive the streets in New York. But that's not who I am. I'm just a guy that just like each and every one of us, the ladies in the house, the little girl inside you that just wants to be hugged, you know, just wants to have a good dance and be treated with a lot of respect. That's the most thing that's important to me, is respect. Yes?
Did you set out your dreams to become a producer, or did
I'm really hard of hearing, so I'm
Oh,
sorry.
did you set out your dreams to become a producer, or did it somehow one thing led to another?
No, I do projections of 5 years. Like right now, I'm working on some 2017, 2018 projects. When you guys walked in, I was working on one of them. When I started out as a producer in 1992 with my company, it was just to start a company to have some clubs to dance in LA. And it's like a domino effect, like one went down and then another one went down, and before I knew it, that Puerto Rican kid that didn't want to speak Spanish, in 1991, I was dancing in Mambo King. In 1993, I was the first Puerto Rican to dance in the Academy Awards. Then before I knew it, I was a grand marshal at the Puerto Rican Parade. I was part of UNESCO. It was like I just put one foot in front of the other. It wasn't even like a plan, like I'm gonna be this big time promoter. And then people started coming up to me and saying, you know what, we'd like for you to do a Congress at our place, or in case like in Houston, like, can you work with us? Can you tell us some of the things that we need to do to grow? And before I knew it, I went from having the one Congress in LA, which was in 1999, to doing 42 of them around the world, which is pretty addictive. So I've changed addictions. I don't do coke and drink, but I'm a Congress addict. I go to CA, but not Cocaine Anonymous anymore. I go to Congress Anonymous. And dancing is my life. You know, it's like I don't dance anymore because I've been pretty open, so I'll be open about it. In my family, diabetes is very, very strong, and it's a hidden killer. And my good friend Choco just died of a heart attack, but it was caused by diabetes. He was the promoter of the New York Congress, and I just had to walk through my denial that I've known for many years that I'm probably diabetic too, but now my feet are very, very, very sensitive, so I walk a little weird sometimes, and so it's a little difficult for me to dance. Sometimes I push myself anyway, but again, you're only as sick as your secret, so the more I keep that shit inside, it's gonna only hurt me, so that's why it's important for me to talk about it. And that way I walk through my denial. And for any of us that, whether it's smoking or whatever denial you're going through, remember denial is D-E-N-I-A-L. Don't even notice I am lying. You know, and so I have to recognize that and walk through that denial so that now if you guys see me walking around, you won't say, wow, he walks kind of weird. Now you'll know why I'm very tender on my feet or going up the stairs very slowly. Okay?
To follow up to that, you said you didn't want to be in Puerto Rico when your parents brought you there. How did you eventually get out?
Excuse me?
How did you eventually get out of Puerto Rico?
I ran away.
You didn't want
I was still involved with drugs and alcohol, and I was 17 years old, and I met this girl. You know, girls do it every time, and she lived in San Francisco. But my goal was to help finish my mom's house. I wasn't gonna leave Puerto Rico without my mom's house being finished, and she still lives in that house on top of a mountain, really beautiful. But the day that we finished doing construction, the next day I was on a plane to San Francisco. I ended up being with my friend for 2 weeks. Then I ended up finding my own apartment. And then San Francisco became a little too cold, and I moved down to LA, and there I am. That's where I reached my bottom. But again, there's a saying that if you want to make God laugh, tell him or her what your plans are. Those were not my plans. But I can put projections of what I would like to happen in the next 5 years, but I wake up and put one foot in front of the other. You know, and the last thing I wanna think about is, that it has to be my way, I have to be open, that it may not be this way, maybe I need to listen to the suggestions of the people that I trust around me. You know, which is very difficult for a kid that's done it on his own most of his life, but I find that today, when I allow the people around me that care for me to give me suggestions, usually they see something I didn't. And again, it's using that term of Helen Keller, is that what good does it do to have eyesight if I don't have any vision? You know, I need to have that vision. And allow each and every one of you to help me with that vision for the future. So I find that when I write things down, which is what I do a lot on the airplanes, it's really right there in front of me. So I write myself a lot of notes in my phones now. Is the pros and cons on why I want something to be done. Am I doing it just for the financial benefit? Or if I'm doing it because it's really, you know, like, why do I have a Gran Combo and Oscar de Leon in LA this year? You know, it's the first time ever that they're at one place at the same time, because many of you may never have the opportunity to see them, or have the money to see them in two different places. You just come to this one event, you get to have both of them. And they're two of the few that are still alive that really can prove what this music is all about. You know, the Tito Puentes, the Celias, so many of them are gone. We just lost a great trumpet player, Chocolate, last Monday, and they're going like flies, you know. And so we got our Spanish Harlem, which is the new generation, on Friday, and then Boogaloo Assassins on Thursday, and Saturday and Sunday, and throw in some bachata there. You know, even though bachata is not my favorite, but it's not about me anymore. It's about those of you that want to come to the event and want to be able to see Grupo Extra, which has never been to the West Coast. And so if I have the opportunity to bring them, or next year do the tribute to Michael Jackson, the Latin tribute, then I feel I'm doing my contribution. So the thing is to then look at ourselves in the mirror and think, what contribution can I do? I can't do a concert like Albert Torres, but maybe I can start helping little kids on the street that don't have any money, or the little girl from Medellin, Colombia, that only has one leg that was born that way, and has more sabor when she dances than most people that I see that have two legs. You know, or I have now a division called the Limitless Division. For those of you who saw the World Latin Dance Cup, you know, we have the Limitless Division where we had about 12 people in wheelchairs this year. Last year we just had one girl with Down syndrome. This year we had about 16, I think, people with different physical disabilities. One gentleman from the neck down that had cerebral palsy that can't move anything, only his neck. But when he listens to music, he smiles. And everybody was crying. And the first 2-3 rows that I could see, there's not a dry eye in the house. And a young girl from Canada was dancing with him and twirling his wheelchair. And all you can do is see his mouth wide open and just smile. And we complain that we have a headache. You know, this guy lives in a wheelchair for the 31 years of his life. Other people came from Israel, others came from Lebanon, two countries that are at war with each other, but when they were on stage, they were dancing with each other. It brought tears to my eyes. You know, and I could see them hugging each other, knowing that they're going back to their countries. I don't want to keep talking and bore you guys anymore.
Can I ask one question? Was there a building or something in the barrio with 23? Because there are a couple of songs like Fuego en 23, and there is another song
Yeah,
with the guys.
when I talk about Arsenio, I usually talk about it, but I passed over today. Arsenio lived in the barrio, and most of the time today, La Sonora Ponceña has made the song El Fuego en la 23 very, very famous, and many think it's their song, but it's really Arsenio's song. And that's some of the reasons why he died penniless, but no one was giving credit to the people that really wrote or put the song out there, or give them money. And one day he was walking in the barrio. I like cuchifrito, which is bacalaitos, alcapurria. It's not good for me, but I can't go to New York without going to White Castle to have cuchifrito. And so 117 in Lexington, there's a cuchifritos place. So just like it's 117 in Lexington, there's 53rd and Broadway, there's different numbers with the numbers of streets. And Arsenio, being blind, was being walked by somebody through the barrio, and all of a sudden he heard the fire trucks, and he said, you know, he was scared that his house was on fire. And the guy said, no, hay fuego en la 23, there's a fire on the 23rd. And all of a sudden he went home, he wrote, hay fuego en la 23, en la 23. And again, you never know when the songs are created, you know, but it's important for us to listen to the words, because some of them have no meaning at all. La gorda está en fuerte de la puerta, or whatever, the fat lady's in front of the door. But then there's others that are pretty important, that when we listen to the words and we find out or write to the person that wrote it, the song of Eddie Palmieri from the beginning that you were here now, it got to me, is Muñeca. Muñeca, quiero que me perdones, muñeca, yo no lo hago más. Huh? Yeah, and he basically put that song out so that his wife would forgive him. And his wife is a lady you don't want to mess with. They lived in an apartment building outside of New York, and to get to the apartment you have to take the elevator, but the elevator opens up to the apartment. And her next door neighbor was complaining that the music was too loud, and ended up coming up on the elevator, but man, his wife shot at her. Like, get out of my house. So she's a lady you don't want to mess with. Thank God she didn't have the gun when Palmieri came home after. The girl did the machete thing.
I kind of came from the ballroom world, and in ballroom and Latin ballroom dance competitions, those are very, very internationally standardized. Like they have the syllabus and like everything there, the figures. Do you think salsa should become internationally standardized, or do you think salsa should become, like every year there should be a new form?
Might be asking the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Because I'm traveling 48 weeks out of the year, so that's pretty international.
Yeah.
So I've been able to see that, I've been able to go to 6 continents and see salsa everywhere but the moon. And next year I'm working on it, but I hate the cold and I don't know if my feet can handle it. My goal is to go to Antarctica, because there's 20 to 25 people that dance every Wednesday night in an igloo at a little bar in Antarctica. And so on all 7 continents, people are dancing to this music. And we call our music, but it's really the world's music. Because when you go to Japan, you see Japanese dancing to it. They're a little on the technical side, but Koreans are not. Koreans they have more sabor than some Puerto Ricans. You know, Koreans, they got it. They feel it. I was there with Grisel Ponce one time. Grisel, take care. Grisel was teaching a class, and she came in when she was going to teach, and by 20 minutes through the class, they already had it. And by the end of the class, she had to like sing Bombay Plena songs with them and do other shit because they had everything she could give, you know. So again, it just reminds me that music is everywhere. And I say I'm the wrong guy because I have the World Latin Dance Cup, and so out of 6 continents, I have dancers from over 50 countries that were just in Miami, December. Next year it'll be December 12th to the 19th, I think. And so we have anyone from 3-year-olds to 75-year-olds dancing, and people in wheelchairs. And if one of those individuals, by somebody seeing it on Ustream, can help change their opinion of this music, then I feel like I reached my goal. Or if we can help a little Kevin that's 6 years old, now at 9, be on Broadway, we've done something good. A lot of the traditionists put me in a room like this and let me have it because they feel that I am selling out because I love watching the Caleños dance, that Caleño style, and they don't consider that salsa. And Cali is probably the capital of salsa in the world. When you reach the